CFB900 live for Wednesday, September 3rd. On today's show, we'll break down the three marquee games of the weekend. We'll recap the biggest line moves in the market since Sunday's open. And before we get you out of here, we have another best bet on a side in Washington State and San Diego State to end the show. Bobby, we're on the clock, so let's get into it. The Michigan Wolverines travel to Norman, Oklahoma Saturday night as a 5-point road underdog in the second meeting all time between these two storied programs. The lone matchup occurred in 1975 when Oklahoma downed the Wolverines 14-6 in the Orange Bowl to claim its fifth AP national title. Much like that game, this one is projected to be a low-scoring affair with the game currently lined 45.5 on the total, primarily because of the defenses, but also because of the historically bad offensive performances out of both teams last season. To turn around the Sooners' offense, Oklahoma coach Brent Venables is relying on the Washington State transfer John Mateer to resurrect the Sooners' passing game. Last week, Mateer delivered, albeit versus the FCS foe. Mateer broke Baker Mayfield's record for passing yards in a Sooner debut with 319 yards and 3 touchdowns in a no-cover 35-3 win versus Illinois State. On the other side of the ball, former Oklahoma Sooner offensive lineman and current Michigan head coach Sharon Moore will be counting on an incredibly talented true freshman and the number one recruit of his class, Bryce Underwood, to make big plays against the Sooners defense. In his debut last week versus New Mexico, Underwood went 21 of 31 for 251 passing yards and 1 touchdown. Now, both quarterbacks will take a monster step up in class, facing fantastic defensive play callers under the bright lights of Primetime Saturday Night. Bobby, what's your take here in Oklahoma, Michigan?
Yeah, as you mentioned, Oklahoma took a ton of early money out from the opener. There was like some 3.5 out there early morning Sunday, out to 6.5 before facing some Wolverine resistance. I personally think that move, the resistance move, was better than the original move. My number's dead on the middle at 4.5. I would need 6 to consider a bet on the Wolverines here. We finally get to answer one of the biggest offseason questions, in my opinion, with John Mateer, Oklahoma quarterback John Mateer. Can he continue to perform at a high level against better competition? Something we questioned when he was at Washington State previously. Now, this Michigan defense doesn't have the same level of dudes that it previously had, but it's still a very talented unit, and going to be a major test for Mateer and a young offensive line for Oklahoma that struggled to get pushed, like you mentioned, in the running game against Illinois State or in week 1. With Michigan, we saw a willingness, albeit against New Mexico, to pass the ball with freshman phenom Bryce Underwood. And can confirm that they do at least have competent quarterback play, something we could not say at all last season. No doubt Venables' defense, I believe, is going to test the young freshman. As you mentioned, the total was bet down. Summer opener was 50.5, down to 46.5, and now in game of the year markets, now we're seeing like 45 after a reopen at 47.5 Sunday, which we mentioned then was maybe because we saw a little bit more passing attempts there. But at the end of the day, I do think the under move was correct. Do kind of lead. I think there might be like a 23.5, a straggler first half. I think that's a decent bet if it's out there. But otherwise, I would need 6 to take the Wolverines. So lean dog here.
Following a 52-3 cover and straight-up win over Western Illinois in their season opener, the Illinois Fighting Illini make their first road trip of the year to Wallace-Wade Stadium, where the Duke Blue Devils find themselves a short home dog, catching a field goal with a total of 49.5. Illinois returned 16 starters from last year's 10-win campaign and is looking to crack the AP top 10 for the first time since 2001. The Illini are led by quarterback Luke Altmeyer, who passed for 217 yards and 3 touchdowns on just 21 attempts last week. No stranger to Luke Altmeyer is Duke head coach Manny Diaz. Diaz faced Altmeyer in 2023 as the defensive coordinator at Penn State. While the Blue Devils certainly won't have the same talent on the field as 2023 Penn State, it is worth noting that Altmeyer's worst performance of his career, with under 200 passing yards and 4 interceptions, came against Manny Diaz's 5-man pressure defense. Diaz is a solid head coach who is building upon Mike Elko's momentum at Duke. The Blue Devils won 9 games last season for just the 5th time since World War II. Bobby, there's a lot of excitement around both programs coming into this game. What are your thoughts here for this early noon kickoff?
Yeah, 2 teams who we're going to be going a little bit off preseason priors on, both beating up on FCS opponents. I know Duke, it was a little hairy in the first half against Elon. But sometimes I think with some of those games against FCS foes, you have to kind of look at and consider, are they working on one particular thing? and whatnot there. So I do think that's something to consider a little bit there. Illinois is a team I was a little bit down on in the preseason, a team that was a little fortunate on the win column in some spots last year and coming into the year with huge expectations. Ideally, usually that's a team that I like to, look at fading as they come into the year oftentimes with, kind of their program ceiling as their rating. I actually think of like Missouri last year as an example in comparison there. But while they lost their two good receivers, they returned everyone in the trenches. We heard all through camp that the defensive line, which was a unit that initially had some questions after some losses, was really performing. And you did see that prove a concept week one. We think that's going to be a really good Illini defense all season long. And Duke is a team that struggled on the offensive line last year, returned some guys, but they were often ran max protect packages for Malik Murphy at the time, who's now at Oregon State. But they did bring in Darian Mensah from Tulane, who's a quarterback I love. Now, would like to see him go through his progressions a little bit more, just generally speaking. But I think he has all the tools to be a really good quarterback, in college for sure. For me, and stud corner Chandler Rivers, who I forgot to mention on the Duke side. But with an Illinois team who doesn't have a stud number one receiver, I think that matters a little bit less. At the end of the day, I do make this game side and total, like right on market. I don't think there's a play here to be made, but this is probably one of the games I'm most looking forward to on Saturday, as it's one game I think we're going to be an excellent data point for both teams.
Finally, in our big marquee games of the weekend, Iowa State looks to improve to 3-0 when it hosts Iowa Saturday at Jack Trice Stadium in the state's premier sporting event, the Cyhawk Series that began back in 1894. With Fox's big noon kickoff in Ames, the teams will meet for the 72nd time, with Iowa holding a 47-24 all-time advantage. But Iowa State is looking for its third series win in the last four meetings. Iowa State enters the contest 2-0 straight up and 2-0 ATS, coming off the 55-7 win against South Dakota in their return from Ireland. Iowa State doubled up the Coyotes in yards last week and held South Dakota to just 80 total yards in their final 7 possessions. On the other side of the ball, Iowa will be led on the field by the longest tenured active head coach in college football. Kirk Ferentz began his 27th season last week with the Hawkeyes in a 34-7 no-cover win against FCS Albany. 5 of the last 7 meetings have been one-score contests, and this game has been lined with a spread of 4.5 or less in 7 of those meetings. Bobby would currently see a price of Iowa State a 3-point favorite with a total of 43. What are you thinking in this one?
Yeah, I think this is a classic game where if you like the favorite, you're going to be able to find plenty of minus 2.5, minus 110 out there. And if you like the dog, I think you're going to find plenty of +3, minus 110. And it's kind of pick your poison kind of type game here. Personally, just to put it out there, I make the game Iowa State minus 2.7. Which is right in the middle of that. But I subjectively do lean with the Hawkeyes here and taking the points. Iowa State, win in Ireland does look less impressive now based on kind of what we've seen from Kansas State in the first 2 weeks. And I honestly wasn't that impressed with that win in week 1 myself. I kind of thought everything was on the shoulders of quarterback Rocco Becht, who I think is a very good college player. But I thought they showed that they didn't have confidence in their wide receivers in the passing game, and they couldn't develop a running game, and had some of the same offensive line problems that they've had against a Kansas State pass rush that is fine, but nothing that Iowa has much better stretch play than that. On the other side of the ball, quarterback Mark Gronowski, the transfer from South Dakota State, did not play well, to say the least, against FCS right. Albany, as you mentioned. But quite frankly, I do just expect better. Is this a game where Iowa played the first game a little more conservatively and just didn't kind of try out their new toy, if you will? I'm a little bit skeptical of that, but I just have to think that his talent is a little bit better based on what I've seen from him on the FCS level. All that, and quite frankly, I think the Iowa offensive line is going to be able to get some traction on the ground and then control the defensive tackle Dom Orange in the middle of the Cyclones defense. So like I said, I lean Iowa here at the +3. Not a super strong play, but I think they're live, but I haven't invested any dollars in it.
Bobby, here are 8 games that have moved a couple of points so far this week. Could you walk us through a couple of these games and just help us separate some of the signal from the noise?
Yeah, I'll pair a couple games together, and actually, like, I know Tulsa is an example on there that's actually moved a little bit more this afternoon, based on the service release. But Tulsa and Michigan State were both are two games there that we've seen a couple different waves of money where it's different services, different other shows, hit the books or whatever, kind of releasing those games, taking those out, as well as just general market support. So we've seen two big moves in that game. I know Boston College's quarterback flashed a do not practice on Tuesday, so that's certainly can be part of that move. Bill O'Brien said he'd be fine, but still a DMP there. Really agreed with the moves on UConn and Cincinnati. Both those games are roughly fair to what I make them now. Actually, I make UConn a little bit shorter than that, but still wouldn't want to take anything south of 7 there. I am surprised by the move on Toledo, taking them through the 7 against Western Kentucky. I'll be interested to see if there's buyback there on the Hilltoppers. And then on the island, again, we mentioned it on Sunday, Micah Alejandro watch, seen in a walking boot at practice on Tuesday, and that number now has crossed 7, leaning that he is, of course, out. And then finally, we'll take the last game transition here. As you see on there, Baylor and SMU, 4.5 soft opener on Sunday morning. On the show, we mentioned that we liked Baylor +3 as a little combo best bet recap here, but now it is down to 2.5. We saw aforementioned hit the books, gave it out on Monday as well, and then a prominent service gave it out Tuesday afternoon, taking us below the key of 3. Hopefully, if you watched us on Sunday, you got that 3.5 that was straggling on FanDuel Live, but like I said, we're going to grade that at 3 or better. Just to recap that one a little bit, we think SMU or Baylor, is certainly live in this game. Just generally speaking, as we like Sawyer Robinson and downgrade SMU's, especially on defense after losing a lot after that playoff run last year. So we make this game below the key of 3, and that's why we told you to take it on Sunday evening. The second best bet that we gave out on Sunday has also moved in our favor. We took 46.5 under in Middle Tennessee State and Wisconsin. It is now 45.5, basically across the screen. So right now, I would still think that's okay if you haven't played it. Probably last number. But yeah, hopefully you got in and got the point of value on Sunday night with us, which leads us into the final thing of the show. As I'm doing the transitions right now, because everything just flows so nicely. We'll take some best bet. San Diego State. We'll take the Aztecs +1.5. You can also do +100 on the money line if you'd like. Just going to be straight up. The board is thin right now. There were a couple games that were close. I know we kind of mentioned the under in Kentucky Ole Miss on Sunday. Cowbell hosting Arizona State. That's kind of close as well. But like I said, for the official play, we're going to head to the Palouse here. Take the Aztecs. A really uninspired effort by the Cougs hosting Idaho, FCS Idaho in week 1, who also faced a ton of turnovers. That was an FCS game I was looking at playing last week and kind of dove in there. And they have a whole new coaching staff. Wazoo was only able to generate 8 yards on the ground and just really couldn't move the ball at all. They had trouble bypassing late downs and then had no explosiveness at all. As far as the Aztecs goes, they returned 10 starters on defense, blew out FCS Stony Brook, and then they were a team last year who had some of the worst offensive quarterback play in the sport. And we saw Jaden Dangle, the Michigan transfer, taking snaps in the second year of Sean Lewis's system and just show that level of competency. I think with the cohesiveness is a huge advantage for the Aztecs here, and I like them to pull off the tiny upset, and I think that's the best play on the board right now.
You can follow all of Bobby's great work on Twitter at BobbyDigital2. You can follow the show at CFB900. If you love the show today, hate the show today, please give us a like or a dislike or a comment. That gives Bobby and I feedback to let us know how we can get better. Please also listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, and available on YouTube. Thank you guys so much. Join us back here Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, as Bobby and I begin to break down week 3 and recap week 2. And best of luck to you guys for all your winning wagers for Saturday. This is us signing off. Adios.